TESOL Pop, Season 9, Episode 6. Hello and welcome to TESOL Pop, the mini podcast for busy teachers. My name is Laura and joining me today is a very special guest to talk about task-based learning. It is, of course, Jane Willis. Jane has worked extensively overseas in Ghana, Cyprus, Iran, Singapore as an English teacher and trainer. In the 1980s, she and her late husband, Dave, met Prabhu and began experimenting with task-based language learning, writing several prize-winning books. Jane, it's an absolute delight to talk to you today at ITEFL. Thanks so much for giving up your time.
It's a pleasure to be here.
You know, it was actually quite difficult to pick the questions to ask you because you've spoken so extensively and been so generous in talking on podcasts and interviews and stuff. So for this episode, I turned to the TESOL Pop listeners to actually ask for the questions. So
that's a good idea.
Yeah, I know, right? It takes the pressure off me, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So the first question we have about task-based learning is, what's the simplest way to describe TBL? People often make it complicated.
Yes, and I tend to give examples or show examples rather than try to explain to start with. For example, a describe and draw task, which is what Prabhu did when he taught us how to use task-based learning. Or a task like, what school rules would you like to have in your school? Write a list of 3 school rules that you would like. Or plan a travel itinerary for the holidays. Something very specific. Because all of those have a very definite purpose. You need to draw the object that's being described, and you end up with a drawing. So there is something that can be shared with everybody else that other people can hear or see or look at. For the list, they can share that list with other people and see what things they've got, and then you can make another list from the whole class. So there's a purpose and a goal. And so people are using English, the learners are using English for a purpose. They can use whatever language they like. It's totally free. They're not trying to use a structure or particular vocabulary. So there's a focus on using English, meaning what they say, a focus on meaning. And I think that's, I think you need to demonstrate rather than try and explain that you can identify a task if it has a purpose, a goal, if the focus is on meaning, if they're free to use any language they want. And also, if they know what the end product is going to look like or be like.
I think that's a wonderful, succinct example. And the fact that you mentioned leading with examples rather than trying just to get into the definition of things. That can be just so easy for teachers listening to kind of start drawing connections with like, oh, of course, I do task-based learning in parts of my lessons.
Yes.
It's so recognizable.
And they'll probably realize that in playing Spot the Difference, they are actually doing a task.
Yeah. A lot of people tend to get some things wrong about task-based learning. There may be some misinterpretations, maybe harking back to the overcomplicated way it may be explained rather than shown with the example you just gave. What do people tend to misinterpret or get wrong about TBL?
Well, one of the myths is that task-based learning is no good because it forgets about the grammar and so anything goes. But that's easy to rectify. I think the biggest misunderstanding today was the difference between task-supported learning and task-based learning. Because task-supported learning, you kind of do whatever you normally do, you follow your textbook, and then you put in a task. So they may have just done a lesson on particular structures or grammar or something like that. And then they feel when they're doing the task that maybe they need to practice that, or they're not totally free in their language use. Or they do a task, but then they go back to the sort of teaching grammar in a PPP style.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be task-supported learning. A task is useful, it's good, but it's not task-based. So a task-based classroom would be where they start a lesson sequence or a teaching sequence with a task. And the task is the purpose of the lesson. So a task-based lesson it would involve scaffolding, introducing the task, explaining the topic, exploring the topic with the class, teacher talking to the class about the topic, maybe telling a personal story to introduce the type of task it's going to be or something. If it's a descriptive class, describing something herself. And then brainstorming words and phrases that are useful, because words and phrases are useful for getting meaning across.
Mm-hmm.
Grammar's useful for fine-tuning, but not at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
It's words and phrases they need to get that communication, to achieve the communication they need. And then the task cycle itself is 3-part. So it's, you do the task, the children or the learners maybe do the task. It could be a teacher-led task, or it could be just a task in 2s or 3s.
Right.
Using whatever language they can. And then they're asked to share the results with the class. And teachers very often miss the sharing. They go straight into, can you tell the class what you've done? Mm-hmm. Or what you found out? And then there's always a bit of a silence, and people kind of reluctant to put their hands up because it's very scary.
It's very intimidating.
Yes, and maybe they're not confident to. So it's always the best speakers to do that. But if you put a planning stage in between the tasks, so you have the task first, and then they know they're going to have to report to the whole class or write it up for, if it's a written task, then they write it for display, for public use, or maybe they make a recording, which is more public. So it's a bit scary.
Yeah.
So they want to get it right. They don't want to make mistakes. So they're in the right frame of mind to actually, in a planning stage, they plan in their 2s or 3s or whatever. Teacher can go round to the groups and help, and they can say, hey, can you come and check this? Have we made any mistakes? Or the teacher could say, well, maybe there's some more adjectives. You could put, you could try a bit harder here. Are there any other words for this? Have a look in your dictionary. So push them, extend their language. And then when they actually come to do the public reporting, the sharing of their results, they feel good because they've worked on this together. They feel secure. And then you can rotate the role of spokesperson and writer and so on. So everybody gets a go at speaking in public or writing for public audience.
That's brilliant. I think we really clarified there the difference between task-based learning and demonstrated what it would look like stage by stage in the classroom.
So it's a 3-part task cycle, and that's what people tend to forget.
Mm-hmm. So over the past few years, we've witnessed obviously radical changes in technology. Obviously, AI is a big topic here today at ITEFL in Brighton. And the next question is related to this is, how does this approach of task-based learning blend with these new technological developments that we're seeing? What are your thoughts on this?
Okay. Well, my thoughts are more, how can the technologies blend with task-based learning?
Oh, yeah, that's
Here they are. During COVID, we all used Zoom platforms.
Yeah.
And Zoom is amazing because it can record. And so the learner who's, if it's a one-to-one learner, the teacher can record the lesson. The learner can do a little presentation on whatever task the teacher has set, and they present, and then the teacher will maybe reformulate what the learner has said. It's all being recorded. And the learner can then listen to that recording. So that's any platform which enables recording easily is good. There are ways in AI, I can't remember what it's called now, where you can record and also you can get a transcript of the recording.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that is a really good thing, because then the learner can look at what they've said and they can look at what the teacher said in the interaction, and they can learn from that. So, and even just, it's a wonderful task to tweak the the instructions to tweak the prompts if you're going to do a search on AI. So if the students want to find out about what AI says about people from their country, what are the characteristics? And an example we were given today was the characteristics of people in Lebanon. What are the Lebanese known for? And so it took a long time to tweak the prompt to get 5 characteristics of people in Lebanon. And it took quite a long time. So actually tweaking a prompt. So if the children are writing a story and they want AI to finish the story, then they need to think, how can I prompt that?
Mm-hmm.
And then changing the prompts.
And seeing what the results produce.
So if the class do changing the prompts in pairs, and then they each put their prompts in, and they'll get different things, and then they can compare the different story endings. That would be a wonderful task.
And this could be done using, when you say prompts in generative AI, we're talking about ChatGPT or Google's Gemini that are freely available at the moment.
Anything that will do that. I mean, something like that was done on ChatGPT quite recently. And but it can be made, it is a task in itself to actually get to produce the writing or the conversation or the dialogue that they want to produce.
Now, I hadn't thought of it from that way, as like task-based learning being a working process that you just described there, like the action of refining things and working on the prompt, discussing it together as a team,
really
maybe.
Precise.
Yeah.
And they don't all do the same one, so then they generate different texts or different dialogues, and they can be compared.
That's brilliant. And there's such varied examples. You give an example of there of recording, using recording software so students can review that together. You've given the example of transcription software where students can analyze what was said, even edit it if it's been recorded into other videos, or even using generative AI. You've covered a whole range there. That was
and then from the transcription, you can get the grammar.
Yes.
You can actually get the students to focus on whatever grammatical structures they need. Or whatever lexical phrases, whatever chunks are useful for speaking. So you can do a form focus exercise on the AI-generated language.
So Jane, we're at ITEFL today in Brighton. There's lots of ideas buzzing around. What's one thing you're really excited about the future of education?
Well, I think the possibilities that emerge from AI and ChatGPT, and there are so many things you can do with that in the classroom or on a one-to-one basis. And I don't know where it's going, but there's a lot of experimentation going on now. I've been to some wonderful sessions here at ITEFL, and there's lots of people experimenting, and there are lots of things that we need to be cautious about as well. I think that's the thing that's most exciting me.
Me too. Jane, it's been so lovely talking to you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, it's been lovely talking to you.
To find out more about Jane's work, you can go to her website where she also has example lesson plans of task-based learning in action, which I recommend that you go and check out. I'll also include links to all of her publications. They're in the show notes now, so you can find those easily. Now, if you have a question that you'd like us to answer or an idea that you'd like to pitch for the podcast, so you can contact us on the social media platforms or on our website, tsolpop.com. Finally, you can support the work we do at TSOLPop by leaving a rating and review so other teachers can discover us, by sharing today's episode with your teaching community to continue the conversation, or by even buying Haven and I a coffee by going to ko-fi.com/TSOLPop.